I'm Liz, and by some twist of fate, I'm married to the most amazing guy I've ever met, Alex. We're both 28, living in our own place, paying our bills, and building a life together. It's been a year since we said, I do, and things have been great except for one small issue, Alex's parents. Don't get me wrong, I didn't expect to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but I also didn't think I'd feel like an unwelcome guest. The first time I met my in-laws, it felt like I was walking into a lion's den. My mother-in-law, Jane, gave me this look as if she were trying to decide whether I was a bother or just boring. I could tell she had already judged me before I even said hello. Alex had warned me about his mom on the way there, saying she could be a bit much, but not to take it to heart. I tried not to, but it was tough. During dinner, as I was passing the salt, Jane said, Stephanie used to cook such wonderful meals. Remember that, Rado, honey? She asked Alex, who just nodded with a tight jaw. Yeah, I remember, he replied without looking at me. I sat there with a salt shaker in my hand, feeling invisible. They all talked about Stephanie like I wasn't even there. It hurt, but I forced a smile and said, sounds like she was a great cook. Jane smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, she was. She was a lot of things, she said. That night, I told Alex how I felt. It's like she's comparing me to a ghost, I said. Alex hugged me and said, you're the one I chose, Liz. That's all that matters. I wanted to believe him, but as I would soon learn, Jane had her own plans, and I was just a piece in her game. I just didn't realize it yet. Living with a food allergy isn't just inconvenient. It's like having a constant reminder of danger. Since I was a kid, peanuts have been my worst enemy. It all started with a spoonful of peanut butter and a trip to the emergency room that made it clear. Keep me away from peanuts and a bunch of other foods if you want me to stay safe. It's not just peanuts, though. Soy, peas, cherries, almonds, tomatoes, apricots, bananas, and even potatoes are off limits. It's a list that makes waiters raise an eyebrow and friends think twice before inviting me over for dinner. It's also a list that my mother-in-law, Jane, knows by heart, yet she somehow questions it every time we're over for dinner. Are you sure you can't even have a little bit of this pie? It has almond extract, she asked, sounding concerned but also doubtful. I'd smile politely, even though I'd rather not, and say, yeah, I'm sure. Thanks, though. It was the same routine every time. I remember one family gathering. I was going through the buffet line, trying to remember what I could and couldn't eat. Alex was next to me, helping me find safe options. That's when Jane appeared with a sugary smile and said, Liz, you have to try this casserole. I made sure it's Liz-friendly, but the look in her eyes didn't match her sweet tone. Alex paused with his fork and asked, Mom, you used cream of mushroom soup in this, right? He knew many brands include soy, which I can't have. Jane's smile slipped for a moment. Oh, I think so. It should be fine, she said, but we both knew it wasn't. I left the casserole untouched, making excuses to avoid eating it. The incident stuck with me. It felt like a small win in a battle where Jane had the upper hand because she controlled the kitchen. Navigating my food allergies has become a careful process. Eating out is like a strategic mission. Alex and I were at our favorite Italian restaurant, one that understands food allergies well. I gave my usual list of what I couldn't eat to the waiter, and Alex watched me with those caring eyes of his. Are you okay? He asked after the waiter left. Yeah, I'm fine. I just hate making a fuss, I replied, folding my napkin. You're not making a fuss. You're making sure you don't, die, he said, half joking, half serious. I laughed, feeling grateful. After dinner, as we walked under the clear night sky, I felt happy. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Jane. Her message was like a dark cloud over the night. Be careful, Liz. Not everyone takes your conditions seriously. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you. I read the text from Jane to Alex, and he put his arm around me, pulling me close. She's just trying to get to you, he said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's message was more than a cheap shot. It felt like a warning. It was a reminder that my allergy made me vulnerable, not just to food, but to people like her who might see it as a weakness to exploit. As we walked home, I kept thinking about all the close calls and accidental exposures I'd had. It wasn't just about peanuts, soy, or peas. It was the realization that my allergy was a crack in my armor, and Jane might see it as an opportunity. That thought was scarier than any allergic reaction I'd ever had. Dinners at Jane's house always felt like a performance, where everyone knew their role except me. I was the wild card who might cause a scene with just one bite. Alex tried to make things better, but there's only so much you can do when you're in someone else's house. One evening, the tension was as heavy as the gravy on the table. Jane was bustling around, placing dish after dish on the table. I sat there with an empty plate, trying to figure out what I could eat without ending up in the hospital. Jane said, "Alex, darling, pass the green beans to Liz. They're just divine." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes didn't match. I looked at the green beans, but something seemed off. "What's in them?" I asked. "Oh, just a touch of almond slivers for crunch," she said, waving her hand dismissively. I raised my hand to stop Alex from passing me the green beans. "I can't eat those." "Remember, almonds are a no-go for me," I said. Jane feigned surprise, putting her hand to her chest. "Oh dear, I must have forgotten." Silly me. Alex stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Mom, this is serious. Liz could end up in the hospital." His frustration made Jane's eyes narrow slightly. "I just wanted to make something nice," Jane said. "It's not my fault Liz has all these allergies." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The other relatives looked around, forks paused in midair, unsure where to look. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, feeling the unwanted attention. Alex's dad, Mark, tried to ease the tension. "Let's just enjoy the meal. There's plenty Liz can eat." But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner was filled with strained politeness, with Jane asking pointed questions about my allergies, as if she were taking notes for next time. Later, when Alex and I were alone, he apologized. "I'm sorry, Liz. I should have double-checked everything before we came." I shook my head, tired of feeling like a problem to manage. "It's not your fault, but I'm starting to think your mom does this on purpose." He didn't answer, and he didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Jane seemed to serve up a side of malice with every meal, and I was the main course. I could always tell when Jane had been working on Alex. He'd get this distant look, as if he were looking at me, but also looking through me, weighing her words against his own judgment. That evening, it was like a cloud had settled over him. "I know something's up," I said before he even spoke. "Mom thinks we should. Well, she thinks we might not be thinking about the future enough," Alex muttered, not meeting my eyes as he fiddled with the TV remote. "The future?" I asked, feeling a sinking sensation in my gut. "Yeah, you know, kids and your health issues," he said, the word issues hanging awkwardly between us. I felt a tightness in my chest. "She talked to you about my allergies again, didn't she?" I asked. He sighed and set the remote down. "She's just worried, Liz. She thinks it's a lot for us to handle, especially if we want a family." I bristled. "We've talked about this. I've managed so far, haven't I? And there are plenty of people with allergies who have kids." Alex ran a hand through his hair, a sure sign he was stressed. I know. It's just that she has this way of making me doubt things. The room was quiet and the tension was thick. I watched Alex, the man I loved, struggling with the seeds of doubt his mother had planted. "Alex, do you doubt us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked up, his eyes clear and firm. "No, I don't. I just hate that she keeps bringing it up. I hate that it makes us fight." I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. "We're not fighting. We're on the same side, remember?" He nodded and pulled me into a hug. "You and me against the world." "Right," I said. But as I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's words were like weeds, threatening to choke the life out of the beautiful thing we had. I realized it wasn't just my allergies that needed managing. It was the doubts that could creep into even the strongest relationships. When we found out I was pregnant, it was a surprise. A happy one for Alex and me, but a complicated one for everyone else. The day we told his parents, Jane's reaction was like watching a robot trying to mimic human emotions. There was a pause, then a smile that didn't quite fit the situation. "We're going to have a baby, Mom," Alex said, his voice full of pride and caution as he watched her reaction. "That's wonderful," Jane said, her words sounding foreign. "We must have a family dinner to celebrate." I was skeptical. Celebrations at Jane's were never just celebrations, but seeing the hopeful look in Alex's eyes, I agreed to go along. On the night of the dinner, the house buzzed with relatives. Jane played the perfect hostess, moving gracefully from guest to guest with a charm that almost seemed genuine. When she reached us, her smile was practiced. "Congratulations, Liz," she said. "This is such a joyous occasion." "Thank you, Jane," I replied, trying to match her formality. "We're excited." Alex wrapped his arm around my waist, a silent thank you for playing along. As dinner approached, I felt the familiar anxiety. A table full of food was a minefield for me, but tonight I hoped it would be different. The table was a feast, with dishes piled high. I felt every eye on me as I hesitated, my hand hovering over the options. "Go on, dear," Jane urged. "Eat up. You're eating for two now." I smiled weakly and chose the safest options, vegetables and rice, plain and simple. But as I reached for a slice of bread, Jane stopped me. "Actually, maybe not that one," she said quickly. "I'm not sure if the baker used soy flour." I paused with the bread in hand and met her gaze. Was that a flicker of concern or a challenge? "Thank you for letting me know," I said, putting the bread down, but the warning bells were already ringing in my head. How did she know about the soy flour? It seemed like too close a call, too perfect a save. The rest of the meal passed in a blur of congratulations and clinking glasses, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's hospitality was just a veneer, hiding a trap set for the right moment. The family dinner in honor of our future baby was nothing short of a banquet. Jane had outdone herself with a spread that would make a Thanksgiving dinner look modest, but my stomach was in knots, not from hunger, but from fear. Every dish was a potential hazard, a hidden enemy that could send me to the hospital or worse. As we all took our seats, the chatter around us continued, but my anxiety never eased. The table was lively with the usual family gossip and stories. Jane sat at the head, presiding over the feast like a queen. She tapped her glass gently to call everyone's attention. "Before we begin, I just want to say how thrilled we are to be celebrating Liz and Alex's upcoming addition to our family," Jane announced, her voice steady and clear. The room erupted with cheers and applause. I forced a smile as Alex squeezed my hand under the table. "Thank you, everyone," I said. "We're really looking forward to this new chapter in our lives." As the meal started, I cautiously picked up my food, choosing the simplest items. Alex watched me with concern. "You doing okay?" he asked. Quietly, "Yeah, just being careful," I replied, pushing a roasted potato around my plate. Jane's eyes were on me, making me feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Liz, you haven't touched your salad. The dressing is on the side, just as you like it," she said, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. "Thank you, Jane. I'm just not very hungry tonight," I said, avoiding the salad that might contain hidden allergens. As dinner went on, the tension grew. Every time Jane offered me something, my anxiety spiked. The room felt hotter, the walls closing in with each passing minute. Then came the cake, a beautiful confection of layers of sponge and cream that made everyone go ooh and ah. Jane cut a slice and handed it to me with a smile that might have seemed genuine if I didn't know better. "For the mom-to-be," she said, offering me the cake. I looked at it, then at Alex, then back at Jane. "I really shouldn't," I said, but it looked delicious. "Oh, come on, Liz. One little bite won't hurt the baby," Jane pressed, her voice as sweet as the icing. That's when Alex's dad, Mark, stepped in with a swift motion. He knocked the plate from my hands, and the cake tumbled to the floor. A stunned silence fell over the room. "What the hell?" Alex exclaimed, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. Mark stood up, his face pale but firm. "I saw the label in the trash. That cake has peanut oil in it." The room erupted into chaos. Jane's face was a picture of shock, but her eyes betrayed her, flashing with something, fear or maybe guilt. Alex stood up, his chair clattering behind him. "Mom, did you know about this?" he demanded. Jane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. In that moment, the truth was as clear as the danger that had been on my plate. The room was dead silent after Mark's revelation. The dropped cake lay on the hardwood floor like evidence of a crime. Everyone's eyes were on Jane, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. "Mom, is it true? Did you know?" Alex's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. Jane's eyes flickered with something dark before she regained her composure. "Of course not." "I would never," she said, her voice trailing off unconvincingly. I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for me to break down under the weight of Jane's words, but I didn't. "Jane," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "you've made your feelings very clear. But this isn't just about me. This is about a family, your grandchild." Jane looked away, her jaw clenched. For the first time, I saw a hint of fear in her eyes. Maybe she realized that her actions hadn't just endangered me, but also her relationship with her son, her reputation, everything. The rest of the evening was a blur. Arguments, tears, and hushed conversations as the family tried to process what had happened. Alex and I left early, the weight of the night heavy on our shoulders. We didn't speak much on the drive home. What was there to say? The truth was out, and with it, the facade of a polite, if not happy, family was shattered. All because of a peanut. The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that's heavy with unspoken words. When we finally walked through our front door, Alex and I just stood there, the echo of the night's drama still ringing in our ears. Alex was the first to break the silence. "I can't believe my own mother would do something like that," he said, his voice hollow. I sat down on the couch, the cushion offering little comfort. "I know it's a lot to take in," he said, sitting beside me and taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Liz. This is unforgivable." I looked at him, seeing the pain in his eyes, and my heart ached. "It's not your fault, Alex. We couldn't have known she'd go this far." But the truth was clear. Jane had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The family was in pieces. Some stood by us, shocked and appalled by Jane's actions, while others struggled to grasp the reality of the situation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alex's phone buzzed constantly, with messages and calls from relatives wanting to express their shock, support, and apologies. Through it all, there was a deafening silence from Jane. No apologies, no explanations, nothing. A week later, Alex told me the news. "Dad's left her," he said. "He can't get past what she did. It's been a long time coming." I wasn't sure how to feel, relief, sadness, or pity. "And Jane?" I asked tentatively. "She's not handling it well," Alex replied, a twinge of regret in his tone. "She's alone now." We sat in our living room, surrounded by the walls we painted together and the furniture we picked out during countless trips to the store. It was our home, filled with our memories and love. Outside, a storm brewed, threatening to uproot everything we knew. But in that moment, I realized that no matter what happened, we had each other. We were a team, about to bring a new life into the world, and that was what mattered. "I love you, Liz," Alex said, pulling me close. "I love you too," I whispered back. The fallout from that night would linger, and the scars it left on our family would take time to heal. But as I looked at Alex, at the life we'd built, and at the future we were about to embark on, I knew that we'd weather any storm together. As for Jane, she was a chapter in our lives that we had closed, a story that wouldn't define us. From now on, it was just us, our baby, and the road ahead. Whatever it brought, we'd face it together.